just want to make this announcement with permission from Geshe-la. Yesterday, probably many of you know, it's the birthday of Panchen Lama, Panchen Rinpoche. We have a only image that is, at that corner, the top one. Panchen Lama, those who don't know, he is this, second highest spiritual teacher after His Holiness, and in the history, Panchen Lama helps finding His Holiness reincarnation, and then His Holiness finds Panchen Lama's reincarnation. So, 1989, April, yesterday, 25th, Panchen Lama was born inside Tibet, and when he was 6 years old, His Holiness recognized him as a reincarnated Panchen Lama. On May 14, then after 3 days, he was 6 years old. Panchen Lama with his entire family basically disappeared, and we say that Chinese in Chinese custody, and since then we don't know about where he is and his family's condition. So yesterday was his birthday, and we celebrate by doing some prayers, and some people, those who are more involved with the activism, we kind of try to contact Chinese Consulate or United Nations or Amnesty International, at least kind of remind them that please find out about this young kid who was youngest political prisoner, but also highly Tibetan Buddhist master. So when you have a time, kind of request as a Tibetan and a practitioner, or just just go. You don't have to spend much. If you go to online, like release the Panchen Lama, or just type a Panchen Lama, you'll find an application already written. You just need to click and send out to to make this appeal for his, if possible, release. If not, at least try to find out where about his himself and his family. So that's an announcement. Thank you. So he's just saying, since we have more people today, he want to kind of leave open. If you have any questions, you can ask right now. You can ask on anything. Doesn't have to be related with today's teaching. Feel free to ask questions if you have. Any questions or any comments or any that you don't disagree or debate or yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about aversion. So my understanding as a beginner is that in terms of desire, there are some positive desires. For example, the desire to generate wholesome mind states is a positive desire, if I understand that correctly. Is the same true for aversion? So, for example, an aversion from negative mind states is actually a positive thing, or can it be?
Chua desha nam yu takurang le kalor le thangbo lao re sabay machin jingan nam yung azu da inji tol tsukina desire lan tyoba rosh lagdwa tyoba lao re tadi tajikdo di chigi kalor tyoba le dwi tanga zuyo na mikiwe chua tsikiwe nam kurang pesha shina gewa drubdi ulo dhan riyo ro gewa drubya ki tyoba yung gewa drubya ki tyoba yana tadi tyoba di tyoba lao re drubdi ulo di gewa tsiku ro ta dindegi indi tadi kalor dindegi lo di shaya yo ro alo tu 아니 다지기 미게와 빵되고 로셔라 대양 되바지로 대니 대베고 로디라 인지민지 칼로 미게와 지기 인구 마로라 그서 다 계획이 초지 요구야 배신 개와사야 되바이와지
대대레스 와세 대문에레스 다가라 에나 전주나라 순이들라 사회 Margal sindi Margal de Migore. Ina ngitup ngin jun sindi fopa jidwa. Fopa tana Margal ge ne pe mingtani 용거 알아. 때 니가라 나겔이 민제 있는 알쟁인 거 말해. 너차 다 너비 민제 있는 너바 인거예요 말은 너바 아니 배 상기 꼬판 투시야 너바든 너바들 슈체진 너바들 팔자 이게 말아. 내 샘제 탐적이 똥에체 투 민전 세 포바스다 왜나 포발라기도 와. 중그리 투그리 네 누그리시야 돼. 다 파도메 베네 즉 너바 첨부지들 레드요래. 이나 미리에 차도다 이게 다 민거예요 말스 때. 근데 너는 도전 그 민데네 따니 땐나 이 인거예요 말스. 근데 땡야 요레스. 준준이 땡기 두스러와. 근데
the injitol konsu dinal sik bet manda horni gyodan shi kyangor shin ngi pangje gi ngaje da langje ngaje le ni so ngaje de ro injitol sik manda bet ni pechi dang sha
알아네. 저 법에는 두스지는 ngaje 시기 orte ngaje tel라 지 파랑 니시 거래. 녀몽에 판고 세야데 ngaje langje ngaje 다 nga저 법에나라 시 점바 비쳤다나 포바식 도텔라 민중거리 니 투그리시야데 대선은 저바다나지 용 초그레스.
So you're saying that he agrees with you. Definitely but there could be a desire which is totally kind of positive and constructive. So when we say desire, it doesn't has to be necessarily negative or destructive or something kind of cause of a problem. In the Shantideva's book, when he talks about the Tibetan word is ngagel, which is literally means I victory. The more common understanding is it's a kind of arrogance, and so this word although it is a kind of arrogance or but in His Holiness kind of interpretation he used a positive kind of arrogant versus negative. But in this book, if you look at this word, the translator somehow used totally two different words, for the same Tibetan word. In the positive sense, he's used, I think, self-confidence, and in the negative sense, he used kind of more kind of arrogant. But when you look at the word itself in Tibetan, there's only one word. So there's one word which is psychologically, it's kind of it's a thought, it's an emotion, wanting to do something. But that thought, again, in Tibetan understanding, we use totally kind of different word. Literally, it would be kind of arrogant, but it's a very positive thought. Sort of like it's like a thought of wanting to attain enlightenment. It might seem kind of arrogant, but that thought itself, there's no better, no higher, kind of emotional thought than that kind of It seems kind of arrogant mind, but it is not. It's really kind of positive, constructive, virtuous, So therefore, just for word desire or any other word, because you're saying that it could be kind of depends on how you use it, and it could be positive as well as could be negative. Kunung ra leg lo.
kunlong ra je legre ngwe gon chani na ji sam로 코나 가가 자기로 왔으러 와. 배나 녀몽을 니밀다네. 녀몽데 꼭 아주 따다 녀몽 단디 참지는 녀몽 빼 미시버 방 가보시다. 녀몽을 가도 자데 시부시 가버려대. 녀몽 님이 통하고네. 네스 방톱 포바시게 봐이나. 딱 랑징가 결승도 왔대라. 그 녀몽 쪽이 나결돼. 즉 매어들라 연돈도지니 배 윤den가게 말랑아 윤데 연돈도 제바이나 랑징가 결돼. 방징가 결돼 들이다. 파기 고원이 즉 누가 샘기 니비차니 말하지.
Although the motivation does make a difference, but here we are talking more about the nature of the thought or mindset itself. For example, with seeing the negative impacts of negative thoughts and or destructive emotions, and then really kind of having this self-confidence, that I will be able to overcome all those destructive emotions, and I can attain enlightenment. So this is something. It's again, I'm using this word, self-confidence, or it's a very positive, powerful, something that is needed, although it sounds kind of arrogant, but it is really positive, something that is needed. On the other hand, arrogant in common sense, that pretending to be high, nice, although you are not, it's totally kind of opposite of the, so that differences come more from the nature of the thought itself rather than other kind of maybe as you said, intention or other subordinate part of that thought.
율딩 간사게 자주된 도서 말하지 용도 와서와 녀몽은 님이 통하고니 빵장에 땡요 녀몽은 빵투 생이 미지게 녀몽은 님이 시대 그바 첨부고니 연기래 아니 녀몽 빠지 탐난 시대 그바 첨부고니 연기래 다 연대 맨댕인 지기 애니베 미 따뜻함시 맨댕 캥바 첨부 연대게 미지기 되니 님이 시대가라 상상 젠데기래 년하고는 루기 자적이 토니 그 말하지 자기도 왔어 와 단지 우세거라 자적에는 말하지 자기도 왔어 뒤인디가 나가서 예 빼코랑 라요래 덤베강로 조미차 연된지게 나결 미차서 나결질 연된 미차서 베트리지요래
and that kind of mental thought can be also seen through physical expression of that kind of individual, somebody who has a knowledge that destructive emotions are something that can be totally eliminated, and through that one can attain enlightenment. To those person, when you share or talk or maybe teach about negative impacts of negative emotions, they will they become very humble, and they react very positively, and they respect that kind of information. On the other hand, somebody who is totally kind of negative, I would say negative arrogant, they prefer not to listen, as if they know more than what they are listening. So we see that kind of physical responses because of that mental thought that is kind of expressing those physical. And there's a common expression in Tibetan saying that somebody with full of arrogance is like a rock with a high rock without that doesn't sustain any kind of water on it or boulder. So that's the one kind of and somebody with full of arrogance usually don't sustain education or knowledge. That's the negative arrogance, because they think that they know a lot and more than somebody who is teaching. And we do see that kind of personality within ourselves, somebody who pretend to be very knowledgeable and pretend to be kind of, but when you ask really kind of serious question, they don't have an answer. I mean, they just kind of be pretentious. And Barbara?
So continuing on that, it seems to me sometimes people have good intentions, and are on the path and have that self-confidence, but they, at least from my position, sometimes do not appear to have a great deal of compassion, loving kindness, the four immeasurables toward others.
Mm-hmm.
So should this not be self-confidence, not be tempered with introspection, and looking at how others see this also, and with some imputation of the four immeasurables?
The morangi tonala the kashe dajigi kunu yabo yunege dindegi langje ngaje lawore dindegi ngaje yabo yunege yankala wore chamningjegi dinde medenge lawore chamningjegi kejuda dinde medenge and dindegi kansa dinde doalo tenzol dakala wore chige 다단로 간리스타 워다 진단로 간리 증거를 저러고 있어요. 랑제가 ngaje 예바 한시리 yan chamning 다치 중교요다 신교요다 지기 같이 요로다 랑제 ngaje 되네 chamning제기 마당 라오래 된제 계주 마당
대다 오늘 잠니지 마당은 근데도 막 보여 용 초계로 와 말아서 냠렘 바텐디나 셔럽게 터차네 오늘 불도 지와 연대는 빼빼는 알아서 따다래디어라 에 윤대 탈바텀되게 간사되기 오늘 송이 원도 전에 녀mol을 가다지를 탈바텀을 이나야 잔주께 샘길 말대 인자 즉 오늘 샘전 탐지기 던지야 될 소야 따셔와 상지부 탈바토라
And you said that that's really that's definitely possible that can happen, that kind of personality or way of I don't know, behavior or personality. Even in Buddhist practice, we talk about bodhisattvas, noble beings, who attained liberation because of their highly intelligent or high wisdom of, say, like emptiness. But however, not having altruistic mind or compassion, they are not liberated. I mean, they are not enlightened. They are liberated, which is kind of more personal oriented freedom rather than benefiting other sentient beings, and that can definitely happen. But however, that's not kind of way to attain the highest state.
딘디 점된 데가 박인이 숭용디가라 탑다타베 샤르브니 칭하고 샤르다타베 탐니 칭하고 제 숭디가라 탑시 숭정 개념는 제거래 제 숭야데 따때리 샤르기 미 제베도니 장주기 선나냥 제바이나 이니 미니베 냥데 토투부야 바데 또 남대인고도.
And in Buddha's own teaching, he very much kind of talk about this combination of two together, and therefore he mentioned that the path without wisdom, path of wisdom without or devoid of method is a bondage, and then likewise method path without wisdom is also bondage. So one must, in order to have a practice of method such as compassion, loving kindness properly, one must open eyes of wisdom or intelligence. So both of these two are kind of considered important equally in Buddhist. Yeah.
딘디가라 겨울무시 숭구도 왔어와. 지 템바 지진 원도 제니 말한도 냠는 제가서 템페 날렌적이 숭균 투모만 임바. 년대대반이 땅지 냠는 타나 네비데 렘바지니 땅지 이 밖에 nga lame partu nyamnen che ata pe tu mai bade nalendi tenden chadi ore ota tena ji chite kala pe lobjong che ne pe temba chi kwa cha ba ji gu gu ar de sung di kala ta kanji yundin chore zamgi ngomba chi gi amar de ota ti sung gu ares i shibun ne chojini ne chambu shibuji re chadi ore tendo lamtande.
And His Holiness kind of in his advice he talks about having an understanding of all kind of Buddhist teachings rather than partial or a half or so in understanding or studying based on the tradition of what he calls Nalanda tradition, and in that tradition the entire kind of tradition is based upon education and learning. So one must kind of go through the practice of learning and educating yourself in its own kind of entirety. So learning something and not others, and those kind of things doesn't makes a practitioner to attain the ultimate kind of objective. So that's kind of it's that advice is kind of from one perspective really crucial and important advice. Yeah.
In Lamrim practice, especially analytical meditation, please give us some advice on when we should move on to the next subject of meditation, and also when we did move on, is it possible that we could move back to the subject of previous analytical meditation, depending on what trigger us to think about that on that day.
Lamrim nyamne chidi zambal deri shada chivadi lamrim nyamne chidi lamrim nalo da gom nalo jegom da jugum yoro jugum da jugum da jegom chidi zambal ene jegom chene ene kadu da kala ore tizu kandejila ene ya ma rimba te jegom chane rimba shin di rimba to la ore di to de ene jodan de kandes to ore kanzu kandes ha ko ore ene gezi jegom chene jegom le rimba to chinsu na yan shugo la rimba to de ma phap chene yang gone jegom chene digre we su lo yong ay de yor yor do
사실 가사 수수기 파기 제바제 상상 제번 주상게 개발 작으러 와. 다 당부 제베 가지지 네도 마시는 파 말로 와. 또 제곰세대 뭐네 레라버지 땐 자왕이는 말해. 리벤드의 장을 보내. 제바타를 참아지지. 아니 도스네 제바집이 제된데라 조금 제야 돼. 그래서 숨도 와. 뭐니잖아. 다 곰들라 젠디지기다 이 심부용 저야 가버리. 곰토니 따와서 따도는 곰밭으로 와서 돼. 마다 용도 것도 가서 수수기 개발해. 리지 담보 에네베 즉 곰라 용와테 제네 에네베 제바체네 따와텔는 밥이야지. 리지 담보니 에네베 제바체 아니 제바체베 제텐데라 아니 따도는 따와니베 돈에는 곰밭을이야. 두시는 것도 와. 곰밭을 가라 따와테 때노 땅이야 빼. 살로 땅에 그 때리기 타라는데 다디 이 용기 두스레 단다 결혼들랑이 따자 랜로요 맨날 미시스로 와. 배 가보지 간제 젠지기 제바체 세대 미티기 간제 네드미 배 제반 루요 맹이 하고 말아왔어. 네드 멤버는 마빠랑 밥 차고 와랬어.
This depends very much on the practitioner's, practitioner himself or herself. It depends on how or what kind of analysis that has been done. If in analytical meditation, when you're doing analysis or examination or investigation, if you are not doing it properly, then definitely you won't be kind of coming to the conclusion or the end. So therefore, there is no choice other than going back and doing analysis again. And it depends on kind of where you analyze. And there are, we talk about different ways of using analytical approaches or technique. And usually we talk about, when you do, first you start with the analysis, and then the whole purpose of doing analytical meditation is to come back upon single-pointed meditation. However, having said that, there's also kind of understanding that, here we can say kind of true trend. The first one is there are practitioners who starts with meditation, single-pointed or calm-abiding meditation, and through that kind of meditation they come to the philosophical understanding or analysis. And then there are another, could be another group, a different trend, who first start from analysis. They analyze, and then they realize that, they find what they are trying to looking, and then they use kind of meditation. So meditation, the single-pointed and analytical, the approach could be kind of, start from either way, and it depends again on practitioners. So both are valid, approach, can start from anywhere. But he said, however, what he responded was actually answered your question or not. He is not sure about that. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Can Geshe-la just talk a little bit about the Four Noble Truths for visitors?
denshigolo ngori dordishna ro chi lasta kala mi sawa
denshigala ngara so samtangena tambo ta chomden degi rungal che parcha asede rungal singindi shegure se sungu sungre tati nyontola jarna samroji tangna tangi ekajire esro ngaranzo rungal manyongken mazundinen zomden sundijina ram parge rosulgela rungal nyom manyongojada rungal 동인지 치야요 말이지. 동알치 구그레. 다 동알치네 군중 빠머자세 동알지 유. 다 동알 신들라 동알지 숨레. 동알 유리 동알 개반디지기 동알. 어다 때 동알기 동알 신데 둔로 셈쟁이나 딩오다 쳐고 알아. 대점지 동앙오다 쳐발라 문진 남베 지기요 말이지. 다는 알아서 동알 세다 마치 동알지 동알선 세지는 문진지 거와. 어다 때문에 배 레와자치기네 배 tum되긴 유리 동알이나 이 7월배네 배딱 something 오금근 7월배네 배 된디기 이 방자 켈링 거와래. 대삼지 말에서 숨도와. 다 남비 동알 세버자 시기 동알 데 가요 가르레스가 레당 녀모 왕기 따게니 단지 마리부 왕기 중에 뚝숨 더 자자나 티무숨 디 왕기 아니 우리 패키지숨 때 왕기 내리지겠다지 던다니 베 녀모 예디지통 디기티 뭐다 쳐베고네 뭐다 쳐베이나 다 동알 시기 동알 데 때리다 잡한디 시기 동알 세게 지시 풍배 쿠르데 레당 녀모 풍배 쿠르데 요바 때시도 다 남이야 대화미도 그냥 뭐 코다 쳐베지 문진 투베이나 디제때 동알 데 셰바레스
Four Noble Truth, Buddha begins with saying that, the first truth being true suffering or suffering of truth. For that, he said that, the truth of suffering must be realized or recognized, and which is something actually not very kind of difficult for us as ordinary people. It's something that we know from our own experiences. Probably, in this hall, there's nobody who haven't experienced any kind of suffering or difficulties or hardship. We all know that from our own experience, and there's nobody in here that intentionally wants suffering. We all don't want suffering, and so therefore, kind of knowing a suffering is the first kind of first step, and knowing that suffering, under that, generally we talk about three types of suffering: suffering of suffering of change, and pervasive or conditioned suffering. And generally, when we say suffering in ordinary sense, we mean that refers to kind of first type of suffering in here, suffering of suffering, and simply kind of physical pain and illness, and those are just suffering of suffering. So ordinary and easy to kind of recognize and feel, and therefore that thought that I don't want this one is again not that difficult. So in Buddhist understanding, the first type of suffering is, we don't need a special kind of knowledge, intelligence, because even an animal can feel that and they can avoid that kind of. To understand and to avoid that kind of suffering, human intelligence is not needed. Even animal can know that and feel that. Therefore, that is not the primary concern in Buddhist, not primary suffering that Buddhists are dealing with. Second, suffering of change, is also considered as suffering that can be recognized, feel, and completely eliminated, even by non-Buddhist practitioners, somebody who attains certain levels of what we call concentrations. So that is also not the primary focus in Buddhist, when we talk about suffering in Buddhism. So in Buddhism, when we talk about suffering, we really mean the third types of suffering: suffering of conditioned or pervasive suffering. That is, as long as one is under the control of karmic action and ignorance, as we mentioned before, this self-grasping thought, you are bound to suffer. So wanting to free, from that kind of condition, wanting to liberate yourself, free from those karmic action and ignorance, that is what we mean by kind of suffering here. So so the nature or the definition, the understanding of suffering in Buddhism is really kind of different. It's not ordinary suffering that we so kind of are kind of aware of.
Wada tendiki leza nyomo wangi nyelengi pumbi yundi chisi yoba tesito ta dungal pe korwale daltapchi mindu nyambe koda chebe kene tesamji mu choye yorabe tesamji choye marwa tate kandesim njungdu 심제트 찍고 그래. 강을 때니 유메발네 끼그 말에 유멜 끼나 그 뒤에 끼인데 그래. 그 뒤에 끼기도 와. 거당 리tumbi 유질이 깨버려. 리tumbi 유데 아니 가르레 디 리tumbi 유데 방고 그래. 세송래다. 매아서 그래. 다 방고 그래서 네가 라까서 레생 레닝이 그래. 다 된다 왜 아니 배 단지 머리비 레생 요몽팅이 머리바데 캐바이나 대왕기 중에 레den요 말에 대왕기 중에 레메나 레디기 판데에는 배 둥알데 메가 차그레스 둥알 빵버자 와다 두시네 수레스 군주방와자
So the first, true suffering. So true suffering, he said, Buddha said, true suffering must be recognized or identified. And so simply kind of knowing and that it is suffering and that I need to free from suffering, that wishes or desire is definitely, it doesn't help. It doesn't take you anywhere. So therefore comes the second noble truth, the true origin, the origin of suffering. So origin of suffering, Buddha said that the origin of suffering must be eliminated. So when we have this whatever any kinds of suffering, we need to look at suffering and then really need to understand what is the cause of this suffering. And again, when we look at the cause, it could be many different levels of causes or factors or conditions, and then going really down to the the root cause of the suffering and then eliminating that cause of suffering. And in Buddhist understanding, we basically kind of comes down to the understanding of karmic action and ignorance or delusion. These are the two main cause of the the origin of suffering. So when you eliminated that ignorance or delusion or not knowing, that will help us to not create negative, destructive, deluded karma. And when there's a not negative, when you are not creating any destructive negative karma, there's no result, negative result of suffering. So therefore, he mentioned that first truth of suffering must be realized, and once you have, then second truth of origin of suffering must be eliminated.
다 대인들가라 군중 방고래 다 군중 방고래 다 간데스 방고래 때 간데스레 지가 고봉문도 저거 그래 다티 당분이 맨데긴지 방 맨데긴지라 방와서 같이 시기가 말와 베스치니티 뉴몽데 세기 타는지 두미도 됐다고 말했어 젤람이 타는지 얘나 이 세기 탑람베네 제베 제차달랑 거 봤을 거와 제베 제차달라 뉴몽 제베 제차달랑 거 봤을 거래 뒤엔 베주치니 내가 서비스랑 거 봤을 거는 만나 땅보리 맨데긴지랑 거 봤을 거 말해 뒤인들 고봉군도 지스 고봉군도 간데스 제거하자 람 아니 람라 롬네 람 곰바자 람라 아니 베 퇴소 땅보 퇴바지 되니 삼바지 이따 중티키딜라 퇴바 퇴섬 곤숨지네 아니 람 율리케 바지네 아니 직 바게 고봉군도 제데 같이 시는데가 람 곰바자 제데 시바디 수노도가라 두 시네 왔다 되기 콘도 주나진지네 덴바 땅보니기 코로와 코르제기 아빠 코로와 주제기 윤디니제 동알당 군중이게 코로와 코르제기 윤디니제 다 코로와란 달타기 윤디니들라 람당 고바니들이 람들라 람가 숨정아 왔다 고바달라다티 동이주루다 되게디간가 동이주루 여러 동이적게 여러 동이니슈 여러 다 되게디간가 고바경가 또 수지잖아 거래 또 수지들라 당원에 코랄을 돌지 돌람 거마데 동이 차바레스 대송이 주야 될 때바지 두고 알았어.
So having said the first true noble truth, true suffering and true origin of suffering.
여러분 무슨 디송도 이 고바데 메나 람 바이 뉴모 제 메나 이 동al 삼네 고바야 말 동al 삼바도 두고래서 가는 거도 고바지에 이제 동al 삼나 고바여래서 송도 여러분
first true noble truth, true suffering and true origin of suffering. And how can we eliminate, or destroy the root or seed of origin of suffering? And for that, comes the third noble truth, that is true cessation. Says true cessation must be actualized or manifested. And cessation here really refers to the ceasing of all destructive negative emotions or mental factors. You can reach to the point where none of this exists in your mind, and that doesn't exist kind of automatically or naturally. It has to come through hard work, effort, through the process of kind of working. And for that processes, how can you do that? Comes the fourth noble truth in the true path. And under the true path, we usually talk about beginning with the three processes: listening, and then whatever you listen, contemplate. Whatever you contemplate, finally, kind of meditation or actual practice. Those three processes, and through those three processes, we can basically train our thought or mind, and eventually, kind of liberating or freeing ourselves. So, as we mentioned before, when we look at the Four Noble Truths kind of quickly, we find two, cause and effect. So the first cause and effect, true suffering and origin of suffering, those are the cause and results that makes us to kind of enter or fall into cyclic existence, and or that tie or that bind us to cyclic existence. The second true path into cessation is the cause and effect, which makes us to free from cyclic existence. So there's a true cause and effect in Four Noble Truths, and under the true path, again. We talk about the 15 path, and cessation. We talk about all different types of emptiness, 18, 20, 16, the one that we briefly talked before. So here again, understanding of emptiness really becomes, main path for freedom. So here, related to this, Four Noble Truths, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that if there is no true cessation, if there's no cessation, then it is totally kind of, it doesn't make any sense knowing more about suffering, If you cannot stop, if you cannot attain that kind of cessation, why you learn about suffering? It's just kind of more extra, problem of knowing about our own suffering. It's more kind of torturing. Since suffering can be put to end, and we can attain cessation, therefore it makes sense to know more about suffering.
Tindula zambe ene zenji pagi tenyo dugala rimba yabo shibun tembarwa tapkebo tuji jembuchene tapkebo jungre tindugala ta tangbo dembaji chokorda su dembaji chokor sune ti tongni de ene be ngone pagi 누제신도 왕본 넘볼라 ene tongni de garso korda 세시 제야 돈달라 시징인도 되는 보데 콜로 빨바데 돈이 그런 거 봐도 세시 제가 돈달에서 송도와 아니 콜로 숨바들라 창이 집에나니 아니 거기 디지샵이 닝빈 돌아도 봐 귤라면 셔자자wen도 어떻게 돼 뭐니 나 라이네베 상하기 답에 람라이네베 봐 삼절 제기 딘디기 인디가라 율진 동방이 또 짤도 동이야기 삼절을 쓰기도 와 어떻게 딘디가라 nga zonde jide shige marde gemgorum jite pe nimbochinu sungdo wa dini shibuji ta gemgorum jenlam tembe rimbate yormu jen karaso ora domba tuji jengi lam tembe rimbate tap kembo tuji chembo shibuji danim do jene miji kenlan jana kale la tomboti de najire de sungdo wa denjide pe ngalam tumbi nyamnen dangenda jarde shibuji sungdo wa 이 여름무지 공단은 무지 배제진의 여름송도 공단은 무지 잡히던 게 제일 많이.
The way Buddha gave his teaching, it is considered that he gave teachings with very kind of skillful means, with full of compassion. Totally according to the necessity of the followers or his disciples. It is the technique is like trying to help somebody to take to the top of the mountain and making him or her kind of rest in between according to his or her capability. So when we look at the Buddha's teaching, he gave kind of what we call three wheel of turning of Dharma, three teachings. The first teaching was basically about Four Noble Truths, very foundational teachings, and when you look at again the sequences of Four Noble Truths, beginning with true suffering, and then origin of suffering, and then cessation, and then path, very kind of suitable, very kind of systematic. And that second turning of wheel of Dharma, he talks more about. It is more like kind of a clarification on the understanding of emptiness, which becomes much more kind of complicated, more higher than the, more deeper than the first turning of wheel of Dharma, the second. And then third turning of wheel of Dharma has a true section. One deals with kind of, making sort of connection with the tantric practices. Or the another way of saying is that making connection with the emptiness of the mind, subjective emptiness rather than
남전도
objective.
또 젤도 때니 지식계가 왔어. 기아리 송도.
And he primarily focused on the from the Four Noble Truth, the truth of truth of the path or true path. Any other questions?
그 되게지 그지.
Yeah.
What you said?
Yeah.
Your question, yeah.
I was just wondering if you might want to talk about how contemplating the your selflessness, can help in your relationship with people that you find quote unquote difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And how that makes it just kind of makes it better, I guess.
소소하게 된다. 코란스기 딩엘디 당매도 소소하게 간사하게 당매라고로. 간사 당매 또에 디기 아니 타가로로 코란기 시에스나 소소르다 강해정이 밀라고래. 된속이 그냥 뭐 저와 제일 펜토로 외려도 소소 당매도 거시랍디기.
또 코란다가 남의 또 비셔 코란 깽깽게 두스잖아. 가보지 그래서 와. 다또 그런 게 내가 뭔가는 선을 펜토용에 초체로 전주나라 저배 파인데기데 삼로당다 안세. 저배 파인데 삼로당다 미투모 많이 베지미 잠포차이기 탑람틴 생겨래. 띵모네 야보래. 그래서 차상 이제 벌진 주가 두스제는 애니베 미상보지용에 탑람지 생겨마다 나같이 루제 디기 맹강가 팽기리 나사강가 팽기리세 레바 야기와 말했어와.
That selflessness alone, you're saying that's probably not be kind of enough. Again, it depending on what level of practices you are or what level of practitioners. So something that is beneficial immediately, would be such as the practice of patience, as we see in Shantideva's book, the entire chapter on patience. Those were something that can be immediately helpful in dealing with, as you said, quote unquote, difficult people. Immediate kind of practical. However, generally, dealing with difficult people, or to make yourself better. It is advised that a more complete form of approach is beneficial rather than picking one way and then trying to work with that. So therefore, again, kind of looking back into Shantideva's a text, having the practice of all 6 perfections, bits of all of them and combining together, and that would become more practical, more beneficial rather than just one practice.
Well, also when I do that, I think about how it tames my clinging and aversion to people that I am trying to have patience with. So that's kind of what, I mean, I don't think I could do like one thing all by itself. One practice that doesn't relate to the other ones.
tanda kurang dangzil kansa dame la or dangzil digi kurangi digi hakusna digi khala or dagi shemba do chungul chine ne shemba de wangi mi shemba la kange tenge de susul kange tenge de zulege ne khala len loya la or dilege nuba do chungul chine ta kuran pen to do lo ta kuran la di
그래서 뱀 도구 말자 깨지 시가 말다. 더더 도구로 와. 여러분이 대승도 미지기 니지들라 나 생데 슈 춤부지가 갑도들라 에님베 나 생데 가봐도 제지 담바이나 나 잘네 많이디 이게 베슈 콜멘을 장물로나 진제 좀 누구리서 까는 것도 펜 도구 말하면 단난 가서 카라스 카사 카둘라 다음에 이 거기 니당 거기 준준이 셰베 저베 파인데기 템바이나 저베 파인데 카사 카둘라 단데 레당 뽑아라 불러다 다음에 맞다는데 윤이 뇽 판타코나 여마르바.
So here he's saying that he's not saying that the understanding of selflessness is of course not beneficial. It is beneficial, but he was talking more in terms of immediate kind of practice. And in fact, His Holiness talks about at the moment when you have a very strong feeling of this self or I grasping, at that moment when you try to ask that kind of a question, where is I, you become sort of answerless. You don't know where is that I within yourself, and that makes kind of immense benefit, as if kind of pouring a bucket of cold water over boiling water. It will just reduce that feeling of self-cherishing or egoistic thought immense. But however, here we are talking more about, because you're saying at the beginner's level, when you kind of trying to help get benefits from practice, it would be more beneficial, something like patience and Shanideva's instruction. Do you have a question?
Yeah, my question was pretty similar. It's dealing with a lot of there's the selflessness of phenomena, and there's the selflessness of self.
Mm-hmm.
And selflessness of self was something that was a little more confusing to me, because I was trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
how do I know if I'm practicing it,
Mm-hmm.
and how do I know if I have obtained it.
Mm-hmm. Shuka dangme de khansa dangme nyi le de da ding na long khurang ki khansa dangme le de dis di kale kharo thong du sa da khansa dangme de dangme yimba khande ha go re dangme to song de to song na to song de khande sa go re lo khansa dangme de kul
다디 또야게 셀rellep티다가 시불 띠리테 디 카보레스로와 말한주 미 풍부 통할되네 미 니든 디제바 에 통스의 자고로와 풍부데 강사래요 말와 다디 오니 제바체용 거래 카보도 카보레 디지 또가 있나 주기 다음에 또야 돼네 라이어스 송도와 당보 원이잖아 강사가 다음에 또 네레라지 말한주 가르잖아 곰지 개베 있나 시 미대지 잡다당 낭 이니 시비 랑데와 인데 그 운중우지라 미대잖아 운중우지 데라 셈데 네레라이어스 송도와 저 집에 그냥 강사데 파체파체체파체파잖아 녀세요 말와 강사 데리세데 맞아 직 에나 에 풍부 개별 때니 나게 송스데까지 시고로와 라바 차발더니 네 라바 차 송스데까지 시고로와 나데 풍부 말이 불라바데 가 말이 풍부데 가 말이데 디 가제데 지된 당연히 여여 바라와 또 저디가라 직 풍부 나다 말이데 딘디지 가서 당연히 저거로 안 저다 대왕기 간사데 네라 제제데 숨고여데 단당 단딩 내가 존지나 다치 대자달로 에너지제네도 시 어서서진 루기로 마다 계속해 한번 들이서 가서지 가서 제네 배 가서 그래 비제 땐지 들이서 수도 가버렸어 이거네 가버려 오늘 닌디 통용 그랬어
although in this part of the text, in the text we find that within these two selflessness of person is more kind of easier to understand. The reason we find in the text is that it is directly related to ourselves. In meditation, when we talk about when you are doing meditation, if you focus something outside there versus if you focus on your breathing is more kind of realistic, more kind of maybe more easier, because you are directly related to your breathing. So likewise, in here the text talks about kind of the selflessness of person is more easier, therefore first step. However, that is not kind of necessarily in our kind of situation, because you are saying that for the beginners, both of them are as well equally kind of complicated and difficult to understand. So as we mentioned earlier, when we identify self or I or person, we usually use this body. This body is the basis on which I or self is designated. So this aggregated body, in our conventional understanding, when we say when I saw you, when I see your body, I have to say that I saw you. What I saw is I saw your body, but your body is not you. And when you try to find you or I or myself on your body, you try to find it, it's basically unfindable. You will end up finding parts of body which is not you. But our conventional, we say that my hand is broken, I'm getting old. And that shows that your hand is not you when we say my hand. It is your hand. Your hand is not you. Right? So when I'm aging, you are going through the process of aging. So in all of this kind of, in Buddhist kind of analytical, when you look at and find on your body where is I, it's unfindable. You won't able to find that I-ness or selfness on your body. You end up finger pointing on one part of your body or another. So where is I that we called considered, it's unfindable. So again, at this moment, Geshe is saying that from his own experiences, it's hard to give you kind of very precise, decisive answer. This is how you feel, and when when you know the realization, this is how you feel or how you experience the result. He don't have his answer because he don't have this realization. But once you attain the realization, then definitely there will be an understanding that how selflessness would, how that knowledge would feel or make you experience.
어때 맞아요. 여러분이 뒤송도 왔어. 시바 타모데라 답에 풍비상 시바데 차래. 시바데야 찌찌지 돈당 답에 지 어설세다. 어설 타모타모 더도데라. 디디 지디가라 어설 발랑엘기로 어설 원두기르기하래. 어설 발랑엘도야라. 나 발랑엘잖아. 마데여서 송도와. 어설은 고주기 배 시바 타셔들라. 누구주나 대마다 열어서 송도와. 이들가 맞아 라야미도. 아니 두수 삼지 내미보지 땅투이나 나싱디 살라미도 인다에 나진디 땡땡 검사 줘야지 연구했어래. 펜도됐더래다.
And His Holiness again, Dalai Lama talks about as compared to thought or mind with the body is much more easier. It's kind of it has a shape and form and easy to kind of identify. But when compared to mind or consciousness is much more subtle. And again, when you go further back into kind of identifying where is the mind on mind, as you go further and further, it becomes really kind of subtle, extremely subtle. And that kind of consciousness or thought, sometimes what we call stays as an imprint or latencies, not kind of mode of activation. So at that time, if you say that kind of subtle consciousness is same as I or a person, it's logically there's a contradiction. It's really difficult to posit that kind of statement. So the point here is that when you try to find out where is I, you will reach the point where this self-grasping that we hold so kind of solidly, eternal, powerful within us, that is kind of creating all kind of problems. You can really decrease that kind of intensity of this self-cherishing thought, and through that kind of decreasing of self-cherishing ego mind, we can have great changes in our attitude or thought. So it just seems.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we'll stop here.
This is awesome, Petega.
No, just more useless.
Ale. Yeah. Yeah, that. 드라마게 뒤지셔도 다 제마시고 zung하게 파인지.
So since time is up to the Geshe said he wants to talk briefly about benefits of thorough practice, which he will do next Sunday at the end of next teaching. And we will do the dedication prayer.
아니 그래서 간제 잘아빠라 미용안에 명령마다 민도도 그래서 넘바 사지 이게 두마다 되겠지 가서 마마지 사지니 토게는 네가 레겨버지 디퍼기 레자샤고
Yes.
용대가라 니쿠치테 군주인 잡은 것 사사인스 니 미징아리마다 용음도 잘아빠데 상일레가 로베노 이는 보지 까나 대대 보지민도 장골 숨지르마다 넘바 전다는데 장골 숨지르마다 능에미도 되게 가서 벌써야 게미도 쓰라.
So those people, Geshe said, who are coming on a Wednesday, for recitations or chantings of mantra, he's going to leave that green book on the table, and because we are collecting the numbers of the chanting and mantra. So and even if you recite it at your home, you can write down the numbers on that booklet. So later we can all send back to the office. Yeah.
Which mantras?
6-syllable mantra. Mantra of compassion.
Yeah. Kari
Rāve kūrve shīngam de pendāng de wā mā lū jōng wē ne jē sīwāng tēnzīng gyā tsū yī shāvē sī de bā dō tēng gyū jē jāng bē bā wē jī darā kēng bā dāng gōng dō sāng bō tēyāng tē shīng dō tē dā kūng kī jē sō dā lō gyā wā tē dā tam jē rāb dō ngō tū sūm shā bēng gyā wā tam jē gī ngō wā kāng lā chō dō ngā Ashenge Zawa Degun Sambo Chenji Rabdo Waraki. In the line of circle by snow white mountains, the source of all happiness and benefits flows in your person, Chenrisi, Tensin Gyazo, remain until samsara ends. Just as the Bodhisattva of Manchushri and the omniscience and Samandava to true. So now I too dedicate these merits to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of past, present, and future, praise dedication to the Supreme. So now I too dedicate this source of my merits for all beings to perfect good action.